What is it that draws one to the rugged wilderness, to leave the city behind? As the lure of nature's pristine beauty calls, what is it that compels us to reconnect and immerse ourselves in nature? Not to just be observers, but to commune with and truly be part of nature. To be in its rhythms and flow. Is it the sense of freedom that comes with being in nature? Is it the challenge of a new and exciting, promising lifestyle, a better future? Is it escaping from something, or perhaps escaping to something? For many, it's the lure of freedom to live one's life in a way that one wants to live, free from the constraints and rules imposed on us, free from the crowds, from the growing population density, free from the ever-increasing stresses, the noise, the traffic, and all that goes with life in the city. For some, it's a dream that gets dismissed and pushed aside due to pressures of a hectic daily life, busy schedules, work to do, and bills to pay. Some are driven in their discontent, in spite of it all, in finding another way, a new route to the pursuit of happiness and contentment. Perhaps it's the lure of reconnecting with nature, of getting back to the land, working in harmony with the rhythms of nature, something that resonates deeply within us. For many, and for those who follow these instincts and the intuition that tells them to answer that call and make that great escape, it's a life of freedom and self-determination.
Hey folks, I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
And this is Jake. And today on Cabin Life, we're taking a stroll back in time. This is our 7th year living alone in the Canadian wilderness at our off-grid cabin and at our homestead, which is partially on-grid. We're going to share some of our adventures and travels that we've had along the way.
And we'll touch on some of the challenges that we met and how we overcame them.
Right here on Cabin Life.
Growing up in the city, both Glenn and I developed an interest and a desire for being with nature. Whether it was going to a park or camping for the weekend, we would venture away whenever possible. Although our dream was to live in the country, we both were on track for a 40-year career in the city. Then helping Glenn's parents build their cottage in the woods gave us the opportunity to relocate. We moved to a beautiful small community, a young couple from the city chasing their dreams. They taught us so much about the lifestyle that we dreamt of living. Canoeing and camping was one of our most favorite activities. Then later in life, with Glenn being a musician and a recording engineer, we eventually turned our attention towards blending our interests in nature along with recording wildlife and a wide variety of environmental soundscapes. As nature field recordists, we were continually seeking out new pristine soundscapes in the wilderness that weren't impacted by the noise of human intrusion. That search led us to finding this beautiful remote area here in Ontario, Canada. And as years went on and we were getting closer to retirement age, we started to plan. What were we going to do and where did we want to settle down for retirement? And you know, it just made so much sense to move to the area where we love to record. We acquired 40 acres, surrounded by thousands of acres of untouched Crown land, with hundreds of nearby lakes and rivers to explore. After selling our house, we found out there was legal delays in purchasing this property, and boy, did that ever send us into some turmoil and, wow, some fast thinking. We packed everything into storage and we lived out of our van. Yeah, we did it.
So with the delays that happened, one thing led to another. Next thing you know, it was hunting season. It's really difficult to have contractors come and, we learned that you have to book at least a whole season ahead of time in order to really get anything done. So that's the way it was. And first thing that we wanted to do was we had to get that outhouse built and get that transported over a proper spot.
Oh
Anyway, we got her in, and that was another nail biter that we got through, and it all worked out okay in the end, and no pun intended. So right from the get-go, we had challenges that we faced. As September turned to October, still camping out of our van, the nights were getting pretty chilly. We actually had below freezing temperatures. Then we had a skiff of snow, and that's when we thought we have to get into something, a little more comfortable. And when there's nothing to fall back on, and that becomes your only home, really, it's a whole different mindset.
One of our new neighbors had heard our story about how we were camping out of our van on the property and stopped by and offered us the use of his RV while we were building.
And that served us quite well. It was a lot roomier than the van.
Coffee.
And then the RV was nice to be in and sit back and relax after some nail-biting days, waiting for contractors and trying to clear snow and try to keep things in order. And
Coffee's good. It's a good thing.
And by the end of October, we decided that it was time to get into something warmer and a little larger and have the cabin built.
Like in this area, because of the snow, the essentials like your septic, outhouse, well, foundation, they all have to be done before the winter starts because of the snow and the frost. We were very lucky in that we found contractors who had finished up their seasons and were willing to do the work for us and get our septic in, get our well in.
Staying in the RV was great for the interim, but as the nights got colder and as time went on, we decided it was time to have the cabin built. We got in, and the very next day it snowed. We were nice and warm and cozy in there. We had the propane heater put in, and we were managing our resources. The coolers were being hauled in and out, and everything that we brought up to the cabin, of course, was at that time being hauled up by sled.
Yeah, as welcoming as having the cabin was, being able to have this nice space, it definitely had its own challenges too. When you consider 200 square feet for 2 people for 4 months.
We hadn't finished the inside, hadn't had time to finish the inside of the cabin. We had just enough time to put the insulation up, the vapor barrier, and we felt that, we're going to get in where the cabin is warm, get our stuff inside and get a little more comfortable. It was a bit of a hubbub and a lot of clutter built up. We were hauling stuff pretty well every day, a new couple loads coming up by sled up that cabin hill, and it was nice to have the extra stuff, but with the amount of stuff that was being hauled up to the cabin here, most of our stuff was in storage. And as the weeks went on, we felt that, okay, we needed this, we needed that, just to make things a little more comfortable.
And then it got a little bit more crowded day by day or week by week, but it did us well.
There was no room for renovating or finishing off the inside at that time. It was just a matter of, all right, let's do what the squirrels do, and that is basically store what we can, hunker down, and wait for spring. And living in the cabin through the dead of winter for 4 months and going through the everyday challenges, the routine of just keeping things going. 4 months living alone with your partner in a tiny cabin may seem romantic, but it doesn't take long for that novelty to wear off. And it was a challenge at times. We weren't always in the best of moods. Things didn't always go the way that we expected them to. And there were times where we disagreed. And we tried not to let the little things get to us. And some of the larger things, we figured out a way to compromise or figure it out and then move on, right? I was saying to a friend, we're in our 4th month now. Can't wait till spring. 4th month living in the cabin, how big's your cabin? And he said, well, it's 12 by 16. And he says, 4 months in a 12 by 16 cabin, and you ain't killed each other yet? Well, you must really love each other. So, and here we are in our 7th year, and we do continue to try to live a minimalist lifestyle, a smaller footprint. We're very mindful of the environment, and we're very respectful of nature. Every time that we walked up that trail, we became more familiar with the land, and every nook and cranny that we could see, we became familiar with. There's the Froggy Pond. There was at the crest of the hill, the Maple Grove. Looked down over the wide open vista and the wetlands. We were awestruck at the beauty that was here.
And both of us are interested in nature, and we love going out in nature as much as we can. This was a lot different for us, where because we were going up and down the trail so much and we had the time to spend to look and watch, we observed a lot more of what was going on and noticed a lot of the changes that happened through the season and from season to season. So it was really interesting how the trees change and the way the squirrels act and the birds. And it was like a real opportunity of delving into the homestead area while we were waiting for the homestead. And everything else followed, got the foundation done, and got all the work that we needed to get done before the snow finally flew.
It seemed like every step of the way had its own challenges, but we overcame those, and we just carried on and persevered.
And then we got the septic in, and we got the foundation put in, and the well. So we got all that done.
And that was a learning experience, had challenges on its own, but every day seemed to be a new day. And one of our goals on moving onto the land here in the Canadian wilderness was to have as small a footprint as possible, to live a minimalist lifestyle, but not in an extreme way, not an extreme minimalist. We tried to do away and sacrifice the things that we felt that we could do without, and the things that we felt that we needed, then we hung on to those things. And some of those things, we, as it turned out, we actually haven't continued to use now that, the first year or second year, it's hard to wean ourselves from some of the things that we had on the, when we were on the full grid. So
yeah, well, speaking of that though, one good thing about being in a small cabin before moving into the homestead was we became accustomed to not having a lot of those things because we didn't have the space for them. So only the necessities, like 1 or 2 pots, 1 frying pan, a kettle, 2 plates, 2 bowls.
extravagant camping, I guess you could say, right? Campfires and fires for cooking have always been something that's been important to Maureen and I through the years. And since we moved here to the off-grid cabin, fire has become even that much more important. And if we'd have had our way, as soon as we built the cabin, we would have had a wood stove, put in. But having just moved onto the land, being late in the fall, there was no time to cut and split wood, have it stacked and have it seasoned to have it serviceable for, the wood stove the very first season. And to be frank, we didn't have the money to have someone, deliver a winter's worth of seasoned, hardwood at the rates that, at that time of year it costs,
to find it.
Yeah. So
the price would have been dear.
Yeah.
But to even try to find good dry firewood at the beginning of winter.
Yeah,
No.
So we decided that we were going to put the propane heater in, and it was a good move. It was quick and easy to put in, and we had a licensed fitter, of course, install it. But once we worked around his schedule, then it was good, and it was nice and warm, and it was vented to the outside, so it was safe. But we still continued having our winter fires as we stayed here in the cabin. Once in a while, we would have a fire outside, and we'll do some cooking and whatnot. The thing is that having available firewood was a chore. Trying to march through waist deep snow to gather, dead standing wood and maple branches and that kind of thing. Not easy to do.
Charbroiled.
That looks like that fancy thing they do at the restaurant.
Oh, flambe or whatever.
Flambe.
Sure, yeah.
Hey,
Cabin flambe.
We're very respectful of nature, and we feel that we are in nature's backyard. Nature's not in our backyard.
There's a moose. It's a bull.
And we don't want to change stuff around the landscape. We don't want to have the kind of an impact
did you see that?
that we often see as we've grown up and witness for ourselves. Many times where we've seen people acquire a piece of pristine wilderness so they could commune with nature, and then build a cabin or a cottage there, something modest, and live like that for the first couple of years, and then on comes the outhouses and the boathouse and the saunas and then the chicken coops and the barn and everything else, and next thing you know there's a big complex there, and the impact on the land is such that wildlife really doesn't interact the same way, and often the wildlife then becomes viewed more as a pest or a nuisance or something threatening to the homestead. And the viewpoint changes because you want to protect things. You want to protect your investment, right? So ourselves, we have seen that process happen many times, and we have moved slowly and methodically in what is the impact that we want to have on the landscape, and we're quite mindful of that kind of a thing. So we're not about to, just because we have chickens now, we're not about to go around and trap every martin or fox or whatever that wants to get into the chicken coop. We will close the chicken coop in as good as we can to try to keep them from getting in, but we're certainly not going to try to mitigate the presence of that wildlife, because that's something that we cherish. And as I said, we're in their backyard.
Right. A lot of people have asked us about bears and how they've been, and we have never had an issue with bears here or elsewhere. Like, we always make sure that our garbage is put in. We have steel barrels that the garbage goes in, and we go to the landfill site when we need to.
And we do recycling.
Right. So we don't leave things out that will attract the bears and give them the idea that they can come here for lunch or dinner, because there's nothing here for them. So they're around. Like, our game cams get the bears. We see them on the camera, which is a great way to see bears. And that's always worked out well. And the same with the wolves and the other predators. We've never had an issue with them.
But springtime is one of the favorite times of year, because that's the time of renewal, rebirth. The snow starts to melt, and we start to hear the birds are coming back, migrating. The Canada geese are flying overhead, heading north and out onto the nearby lakes.
Snow is melting. Spring is here. Feels good.
It's also sap time, where the maple sap is running, and we make maple syrup. Our very first year was interesting. We just tried a little bit, and we got a few jars, a few liters out of that. So we have carried on in subsequent years.
That is a fun time. Maple sap is a great time of year. It's a lot of work. Snowshoeing through the snow to put the spiles in the trees and tap the trees and do all that work. But it's great exercise. I think of it as, well, this is my getting in shape for the summer and the garden thing.
I like the rewards of the sweet syrup, and it's Maureen uses it in baking, and we have it in our coffee and that kind of thing. So it is a great replacement for sugar. And that is something that we've been mindful of, trying to be more self-sufficient, self-reliant, and Maureen takes the care of the garden. And springtime is the time when we do our maple syrup, and it starts the year off, and we only have a small window of opportunity to do that. It wasn't long after that we settled onto the land, and there were so many tasks to be done. A lot of the trees that had been cleared to make room for the homestead were downed, and some of them were limbed up, and there were big stumps along the cabin trail, and I wanted to get a lot of that stuff moved up and out of the way. But I had injured myself moving that, and it was a big mistake because it was a serious back injury. It took me a long time to convalesce and finally get back to the point where I had, days where I felt I could do a little bit here and there, and then I might have to rest, take a break for a couple of days, and then get back to it for a little bit after that. So but I've learned to go as I can, and learn the limits and try not to push too far beyond them, especially to the point of injury. When you're young and you've got all the energy and whatnot, you feel like you're invincible, right? And that you get her done, right? That there's only today to do it. But if you do find yourself injured, you'll find out that there's a lot of days where you can't do things, and you really do think back and consider it.
It reminds me of that saying, the faster I go, the behinder I get. And that sure happened with that, eh? Like, that put us behind about a year.
As it turns out, it also divided up our energies because there were certain things that bending over and trying to do certain tasks I couldn't do very well, so I needed help.
Are you gonna help me dig some sand? Jake, look. We gotta put all the sand over there. Put it over there, okay? You dig it. Atta boy.
And Maureen gave me a hand, for instance, taking all the all the lumber, the posts and whatnot that we needed out of the woods, and she helped out with getting a lot of the cedar poles out of the woods.
Since I could only bend down for a few minutes at a time to do certain chores, the cabin flooring was out of the question.
It's something where we had to split up our energies and pick certain tasks that I could do. I could swing the scythe and I could clear the trail and that kind of a thing, but other things we just had to pick and choose. So it slowed us down a little bit. We don't use snowmobile. We don't have any heavy equipment, machinery, ATVs, tractors, and none of that kind of thing. We pretty much everything that we've done for construction work and whatnot has all been hand tools. I'm old school. I grew up, with the concept of, hey, give me a hammer, a saw, a square, and a level, and pretty well good to go. There are times when we do use battery powered equipment and whatnot, and that does make things a lot easier and speeds our projects up. We don't use a lot of power tools and heavy equipment, big heavy machinery, or any of that. My philosophy is the more complicated something like that is, the more moving parts there are, the more chance there is of stuff breaking down. So.
Preparing the homestead opened an area for the forest garden where the soil was shallow peat on bedrock. With the average depth only being about 2 feet, we needed to find a method to easily create new raised garden beds. Garden methods like Back to Eden and lasagna gardens caught our attention because they're simple methods for building organic garden beds quickly using biomass and topsoil from our land. Using the simple layering method made it possible for us to plant an organic garden quickly in the spring so we could enjoy the harvest of a beautiful weed-free garden all through the summer. A few perennial teas and herbs, some tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, and potatoes. And the garden expanded each year after that. All we had to do was add another layer of organic biomass to the top and continue gardening.
As the seasons have changed, we've explored the land and we've gotten to know, various areas that we enjoy going to, and you've set out the microphones to record the wilderness soundscapes, and there's different habitats which are more conducive to, various sounds and wildlife. So we've had our outpost camp in one spot. We've got another camp in another part of the land. It's really interesting to listen to the various habitats and to be able to camp out in these wilderness outposts. So as well as setting out the microphones, we also will set out the trail cams in the area. So it's always interesting to hear the sounds and also to see what kind of animals and wildlife are passing through the area around the homestead and the off-grid cabin. you never know what kinds of wildlife that are passing through. We've been quite surprised at times.
And with going out and harvesting from the land, like getting the raspberries and the blackberries off of the land, those are the favorites of the bears too. So it's nice to know if there are bears in the area. So when we see them on the trail cams, we know that when we're out foraging, to be that much more careful that we don't interrupt the bears doing their foraging as well.
Maureen likes to leave some berries for the bears. Whenever I hear Maureen ringing the bells when she's berry picking, I always think back. I guess it triggers me back to my childhood in the city when I heard the ice cream truck. And now I always kid her. Hey, Maureen, you're ringing the bells for a treat for the bears? Getting around in the wilderness and around the off-grid cabin and homestead depends on the season and the weather. Often we will just be hiking around. We do wear boots almost all the year round when we're walking around in the forest, in the bush. We do wear boots. There's parts of the forest that are quite wet and other parts that you don't want to be tripping on stuff and injuring your feet and so forth with just regular shoes. So we do wear boots a lot of the time, and you'll see in our videos that's the way it is. In the winter time, our winter boots come in handy to keep us warm and protected. And we'll often go snowshoeing if the conditions are right. And there's other times where we don't do the snowshoes just because it's not conducive to walk that way in the forest. Snowshoeing, we thought that would be a breeze in the winter, and it turned out it's a lot of work, especially in the fresh laden snow. Along the forest trail, it's really nice to do the snowshoes, and it's always different from season to season. Doing chores and tasks around the off-grid cabin and homestead is something that where you fall into a routine depending on the season, and you take advantage of the opportunities when the opportunity knocks. When the weather is conducive, that's when you go out and you do your outdoor work, and when it's not very conducive, you turn indoors to do things there, or you're forced then to do the stuff outside that you didn't have time to do previously. And so you learn to pay the price as you go, and eventually, you learn, hey, plan ahead, do the preparation, and try to get her done before, the foul weather sets in. Often we have to work around snow and blizzards or rainfall in the rainy season, and then when the spring comes, we have to work around the mosquitoes and black flies, and that's a few weeks where it's just not very conducive for working outside in the deep forest. So there's, we pick and choose what we want to do and when we need to do it. Gathering firewood for instance, is one of the things. Being out in the bush and cutting down dead standing trees, you don't want to be doing that in the middle of mosquito season. So we prefer to do that in the late fall, sometimes even in the winter, where you can, travel on top of the frozen snow and ice to get at some of that wood, but that presents its own challenges as well. So cutting wood, we like to do that. Cutting and stacking, do that in the late summer and early fall when temperatures are cooler, no bugs, and it's just real pleasant for working outside. All of our firewood has to be cut and split and stacked. We do all that by hand, and we basically have to have that seasoned for 2 full years ahead of time. 1 full year of seasoning is good, but we like to have the firewood stacked and ready to go, sitting there for about 2 years before we start to burn it. We have both maples, we have both hardwood and softwood on the property, and we do like to burn the maples and the hardwood for our wood heat and for cooking as well. As the seasons change, we try to enjoy each season and do the activities that are accommodating. We like to go canoeing in the summer and do our nature recording. And in the fall, it's just great to take walks and enjoy the fall colors. And before the freeze up comes once again and the heavy snows come.
Then winter starts, and it's like for us, it's like the new starting again, right? Like we started here in the autumn, so every year it's like we're starting again.
It reminds us of our anniversary of arriving here on the land. As the seasons change, we become very aware of the rhythms of nature and how things have a cycle, and they turn gradually around and come full circle once again.
Okay.
Yep, change to the pond, eh? You've noticed that a lot.
I have. In the mornings, there's little bits of ice forming, ice crystals, and they're beautiful. They're really nice to look at. And by midday, when it warms up, they start to disappear.
That's the one thing about having a froggy pond. You know, it's just a puddle. It's a drainage area where the water tends to drain down to when we get rains and the snow melts and stuff. But it becomes a really good indicator for us exactly what's happening on the land from day to day, from season to season. So in the summer, the pond dries up as we've shown you before, and other times when the rain comes, the pond it actually fills up and overflows the cabin trail here. And there's times when the pond is so active with frogs in the springtime, and then here we are now.
and it's just so quiet. So it changes from day to day, month to month. It's very interesting. So it acts as a indicator for us of what's happening around the land. When we see the pond, the froggy pond freezing up here, we know it's not very long before the beaver pond freezes up by the cabin there. So it is a nasty, wintry, blizzardy night out. Yes, Mother Nature is showing her anger. She is showing her wrath. Winter's wrath. Yeah, it's a beautiful danger, a dangerous beauty.
And that's all for this one. We'll see you next time right here on Cabin Life. I'm Glenn.
I'm Maureen.
Over and out.
Take care.